substitution piece is placed in the space prepared for it and then taped on the back as before. She continues the sequence of work, cutting out each piece from the background, finishing the cut on the substitution piece, and taping it into the background. In the sequence we're now seeing, the artisan has cut out a section of the background and will be replacing it with one of the shaded petals we saw being created earlier. By cutting out the background, she can visually inspect the proper location of the underlying piece for cutting out. The underlying piece was not actually taped here, and we recommend that you tape the pieces together to avoid inadvertent movement. Here is the completed picture with all the shaded petals and leaves assembled into the background. Before we go into the next operation, let's review some tips related to the process we've just viewed. When cutting through 2 plies of material, don't try to cut through both plies at once. Cut deeply enough to score the bottom layer. Try to keep your forefinger straight, not bent. Keep the knife as horizontal as possible. When cutting through the score mark on the bottom layer, carefully trace the kerf with the knife several times rather than trying to cut through it at one go. Use masking tape or veneer tape to back the material you're cutting. Tape the edges of the background material, often called the waster, to ensure that it doesn't split. When cutting very small components, use stabbing cuts with the point of the knife which overlap one another. Cut from the corners of a design outward to avoid cutting into areas of the veneer you don't wish to cut. Move the marquetry piece while cutting as opposed to moving your body. Cut across your body from left to right if right-handed, and opposite if you're left-handed. Use a moderately hard cutting surface such as a cutting mat, floor vinyl, or other similar surface. Cutting mats can be found at art supply stores. Another cutting method useful when you have a shaded piece is to add the background, to cut through the background, making a window. Then place the replacement piece under the window and score the replacement piece. Remove the replacement piece and then score and cut the replacement piece carefully. Hold the knife about 5 degrees from the vertical so that the blade point is towards the outside of the window. This will enable a closer fit. Use a good light over the working surface. Use a magnifier on a stand if necessary. Holding the assembled sheet up to the light tends to exaggerate the imperfections. However, if there is too much light, just try again. Use a rubber, a piece of wood or MDF that has a curved or radius edge to smooth the joint, or use a light hammer to flatten the joint after gluing. Finally, remember that practice is necessary to achieve skill. Use scraps of wood provided with your kit. The next step in the process is to mount the completed marquetry to the baseboard. We start out with a piece of MDF cut to the appropriate size. The first step is to round the edges. We start out using a table saw to make a rough cut. However, you can do the entire job with a hand tool, such as a plane or sander.
chưa chưa rồi cầm lên đi, cầm cái miếng gỗ lên luôn, rồi em để nó trà luôn. Chưa lên. Rồi.
Here is a view of the completed baseboard. The next part of the process is to mark the edges of the baseboard evenly all the way around. The distance will be the width of the border veneer we will be applying later. The artisan uses a jig because he will be making many of these and they will all be the same size. The background veneer is placed on the work surface, the tape removed, and light sanding is done on the face. A veneer glue or contact glue is used to adhere the background to the baseboard. Both surfaces are glued. It's important that you make sure there are no unglued spots remaining, as they typically cause bubbles later when the glue dries around them. The background is carefully placed on the baseboard, and a homemade tool called a rubber, made of a piece of wood or MDF, is used to smooth out the veneer and make a strong contact without any bubbles. In this sequence, the artisan is drawing a line from the corner of the background to the corner of the baseboard, and also marking a sight line on the background which will be used later and then removed by sanding. Glue is applied to opposite edges of the baseboard in preparation for installing the border veneer. Notice the pre-cut border veneers wrapped in the foreground. Again, glue is applied to both surfaces to be glued.